Good morning again. My name is Dennis Tsu. I'm with SRI International, and I'd like to again welcome you all to this beautiful, lovely building. I congratulate Acate for opening the center. It's phenomenal. I am very jealous. I wish we had a building like this at SRI. And I am honored to be asked to present to all of you and to sign an agreement with Santa Catarina to encourage innovation here in Brazil. I've been asked today to spend the next 1.5 hours or so talking about the importance of innovation, perhaps trying to inspire some of you, give you new ideas of what innovation can and we believe will mean to the world over the next 20 years. And also share with you some thoughts on how to manage innovation. Santa Catarina has made a big investment, both from the government and the private sector, in building centers like this and opening them up across the state. The challenge for you now is going to be, how do you manage those centers? How do you encourage entrepreneurs, inventors, teams of people to invent new products, bring them to the market, not just here in Brazil, but all around the world. And I want to share with you some ideas and some thoughts about that over the next few minutes. So there are several topics I'd like to cover with you. The first of those is a brief introduction to SRI. And then I'll talk about some of the other topics you see on the slide. SRI, Stanford Research Institute. SRI was founded by Stanford University back in 1946, and we separated from the university in 1970. This was the middle of the Vietnam War. We were doing a lot of research for the Defense Department. The students didn't like that. They all protested, just like you had a protest on the street out here yesterday. And so we separated from the university. So today we are an independent, nonprofit research institution. About 2,200 staff members, employees, and every year we do about $500 million in contract research and development. So this is research that companies, governments, institutions pay us to do, to try and solve problems, okay? Our mission, as we are solving those problems, is to try and create world-changing solutions that help make all of our lives better, that make us safer, healthier, and more productive. And that's what we're trying to do. And this is very broad. It's part of why I work at SRI, is we get to play with all of these different kinds of technologies and areas. And over the last 70 years, we've invented a lot of really neat things. Any of you ever used a computer mouse? Yes? We invented the computer mouse way back when. If any of you have ever used something called the internet, the internet was preceded by the ARPANET. SRI sent the first packet on the ARPANET from SRI to UCLA. So we actually helped build the internet. For those of you that know Siri on the iPhone, yes, we invented Siri. And I'll talk some more about what the future of that technology looks like. If any of you watch HD television, yes, We invented the standard for HD television. So we've invented many things over the last 70 years. More important, though, is what we are working on today, because that's all history. What we're working on today is grouped in these 6 areas. And I'll start with biotechnology and health. We're doing a lot of research on cancer detection, cancer treatment, obviously a big problem. We're doing a lot of research on the diseases of getting older. As you get older, you don't walk so well, you don't think so well. We're trying to solve those problems because around the world, the people of the world are getting older. And we're doing a lot of work on tropical diseases. And we've cooperated with several universities here in Brazil on dengue fever, malaria. We're working now with Ebola to try and solve some of those problems. In the learning and education systems area, we're trying to figure out how to help our young people, your children, learn math and science better. We believe that if young children do not learn algebra, specifically algebra, they will never go on in school and learn chemistry or physics or engineering, and they essentially end up working in America at a McDonald's turning hamburgers. It's a terrible job, okay? We think we need to do a better job of training our young people on math and science. And we've got a big group focused on trying to do that we hope might work with universities and school systems here in Brazil. In the information technology space, we are not focused on making computers smaller and faster. Intel, other people do that. We're trying to solve what we consider to be 4 hard problems in computer science. One of them is security. The internet is not secure, passwords are not secure, and we're trying to figure out how to make the network, the computers and our network more secure. That's one big area. The second is that as computers get to be smaller, you all have heard of the Apple Watch? Yes? You can't have a keyboard. How do you interface to that computer? If any of you have young children, I have a colleague who has a 1-year-old baby. At 1 year old, the baby's already grabbing for the iPad of his mother. And he's playing with it, right? Children today, we believe that 10 years from now, all of us will interface to computers differently than we do today. No more typing. It will all be talk and gesture, okay? And so one area of research is around teaching computers to listen, to understand your conversation, understand what you mean, and act on it. A second is around vision, teaching computers to see, okay? How many of you have heard of the Google car? Okay. I have a colleague whose son, actually son and daughter, both are working on the Google car. It is driving in California today. You get in the car, you sit down, there's no steering wheel. There's no gas pedal. You just sit in the car and you tell it where you want to go, and it takes you there. Taxi drivers all around the world should be very scared, okay? How does that car work? There are cameras front and back. That's easy. Taking video image all the time. That's easy. Seeing a stop sign and knowing where to slow the car down and stop. That's hard. Seeing a ball bounce into the street and a little boy run after it and know, stop the car now, that's harder still. And so we are teaching computers how to listen, how to talk, and how to see. And then we're marrying all of that with artificial intelligence. So you remember Siri on the iPhone. Siri? We actually believe Apple has disappointed us. When we licensed it to Apple, they turned it into essentially a voice-driven search engine. So you can talk to it and it gives you search results back. They're trying to compete with Google. That's not what we wanted to do. And so we still have the core IP. So we're now building not search engines, but action or do engines, so that you can talk to your devices and they will do something for you, okay? So for instance, imagine your kitchen 5 years from now. You go into the kitchen, you open the freezer, you take out a package of empanadas. Your freezer will talk to you. Your refrigerator will talk to you. It will ask you, would you like me to add something to the shopping list? You'll say, yes, please. Oh, I need to add a package of empanadas. And then it will talk to your iPhone and add it to your shopping list. You unwrap the empanadas. You put them in the microwave oven. The microwave oven will talk to you. It will ask you, what would you like me to cook? And you tell it, 4 empanadas, please. Empanadas queso, right? It will go off on the internet and figure out exactly the right amount of time. You don't have to touch any buttons. Okay? That kind of artificial intelligence is being built today into cars, into kitchen appliances, into cash registers, into a whole variety of devices all around the world. And so that's what our IT department focuses on. In engineering and systems, you see the big satellite dish. That dish is at Stanford University. It happens, we run it, we built it, we run it. It happens to be the satellite dish that calibrates all the GPS satellites around the world. So if any of you use GPS in your car and it gives you bad directions, you can blame me. SRI is responsible for making sure you're on the right road. For those of you that saw the movie Gravity, people saw the movie Gravity? We run the network for the World Space Agency that tracks all the junk flying around the world so that you can avoid collisions. If any of you believe in aliens, we run the SETI network, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. We're listening for signals from outer space all the time. So we do things like this, okay? But the engineering group also builds a lot of robots, and I'll come back and talk about robots in a few minutes. And then in material science, we have a big group focused on biofuels and bioalgae, and I know that's a big business here in Brazil, ethanol and so forth. And also we're very much focused on carbon capture to try and slow down global warming, okay? And then my group and Peter Kant's group, we're focused on how innovation really drives economies, which is, I think, what you all are trying to do here in Santa Catarina And we will be here all week to have a conversation with you about what you are doing, what we have observed around the world, and perhaps how we can give you some suggestions for how to make your system better. So with all of that, one of the reasons that SRI gets asked by organizations around the world to help with this kind of problem is that every year, you remember I said we have $500 million in research and development. From that, our scientists, inventors like some of you, give to our lawyers 500 times a year. They give our lawyers a form, a patent disclosure form, saying, we've invented something, we think it's new and exciting and cool. Twice a day, 500 times a year. Our lawyers read all of those. They don't always agree. About 200 times a year, they actually file for a patent with our patent office, the US Patent Office. After 1 or 2 years, we usually get about 100 patents for every 200 that we file. So only about half, okay? Of those 100 we get, our objective every year is to sign 50 commercial licenses and spin off 5 new startup companies, okay? So think about that. $500 million in R&D, 500 patent disclosures, 200 patent filings, 100 patents granted, 50 licenses, 5 startups. Those are our metrics. I'll show you Stanford University's metrics in a little bit. Part of what we want to understand here in Santa Catarina is what do those metrics look like for your region, for your state, for your economy, and how can we help you improve your performance all across the board. Okay? So that's a little bit about SRI. Now, why innovation? Why do we care about innovation? Famous Frenchman, about 150 years ago, said the only thing constant in life is change. He was actually right. And we believe innovation is what's going to drive our economies over the next several decades, centuries. And it looks like there's some people here that may be young enough that you cannot remember the world before the internet. But the internet is 25 years old, okay? The world has changed a huge amount in the last 25 years. I think you all recognize that. The exciting thing to us and the scary thing to us is that we think the speed, the pace of innovation is increasing. And the world will change more in the next 25 years than it has in the last 25 years. That creates opportunity and it creates risk. Part of that is just driven by the explosion in people. As a world, we're going to add another 2 billion people in the next 30 years. And most of those people live below the equator. Latin America, Africa, that's where the growth is occurring. So the world's markets are changing. Brazil is going to be, is already, and will continue to be one of the biggest, fastest growing markets in the world. That's both an opportunity for all of you, and it means you're going to be competing with companies from China, from the US, from London, from Frankfurt, who will be bringing their products here, and you will have to compete with them. As that population grows, we'll need more food, We'll need more water. We'll need more energy. And all of those things are not easy. We're already running out of many of them. Huge opportunities for innovation. Water treatment, energy, clean energy, and so forth. Because we're in Silicon Valley, we also know that computers will continue to get smaller and cheaper. By the year 2030, which is only 15 years from now, we know actually, that you will be able to buy a computer no bigger than this for about $1,000, and it will have more computing power than the human brain. Okay? Think about that. What do you use it for? Imagine you're going to bed at night, and you could take your brain out of your head and put it on the nightstand next to your bed and say, go solve this problem for me. What problem would you ask it to solve? Who's going to write that software? What software, what operating system will it run? I hope it's not Windows. But what do you want if your brain is running an operating system? What do you do? Software engineers here in Florianopolis can solve this problem just as well as software engineers anywhere else in the world. Okay, there is a huge opportunity as computers continue to get smarter. And we know that more and more computers are connected to the internet. Soon we will have sensors in our shoes, in our clothes, on our wrists, in our glasses. And they all talk. They're all connected at a faster and faster speed. So what that's meant is that today there are already over 100 startups that have received funding to build the Internet of Things. Okay, this is just an example. So go back to your kitchen, or my kitchen. 5 years from now, I'll be wearing an Apple Watch or something like that. I will go into the kitchen at night. I will open the freezer because I'm hungry. I want some ice cream. I reach into the freezer to get the ice cream, and the refrigerator will talk to me. It will say, Dennis, no ice cream for you today. You didn't exercise enough. Not allowed. Okay? So my wife does not have to nag me. My refrigerator will nag me. These sorts of things are being built today. These applications are being built right now. And the way we shop is going to change. The amount of electronic commerce, the amount of products that are bought and sold over the internet is growing like crazy. And the biggest user of the internet to buy and sell things, it's not the United States, it's China. And they're the fastest growing economy in the world. Okay? Any of you that are considering consumer goods, consumer products, the market you need to be worried about, the market you need to be thinking about, the competition you need to be focused on is China. More than the US, it's China. My son graduated from university 5 years ago, 4 years ago now. He was at Stanford. I'm a very proud father. I was paying $55,000 a year to send my son to Stanford. Okay? That's not sustainable. If it continues to go up, the cost of a college tuition is increasing faster than gasoline, then healthcare, then food. So now there are all these companies that have formed to offer Stanford courses, MIT courses, Cambridge courses online to students here in Florianopolis. How does this change the role of the university? What does it mean to how we learn, and what's the function of the university as the world's best professors are available to students around the world? We also know, again, we've been asked by the government in the US to build a portable DNA analysis machine. So that's going to be a box about this tall, 1 drop of blood from your finger in the machine, 15 minutes, complete DNA analysis. We're using that to help diagnose diseases in the jungle, on a battlefield. But think about using that in a civilian application. It's your doctor. So now you can go to the doctor, and in 15 minutes he can tell you what kind of cancer you have, what stage it's at, and how best to treat it. This kind of capability is coming. As a fun and a little bit scary example, I'm sure you have also heard that people are using stem cells now to grow things like human ears, to replace that if it's been lost in an accident. Imagine forward 25 years. I've talked to our scientists, our researchers. What they tell me is that 25 years from today, any of us will be able to go to the doctor, get an IV. That IV will have a combination of stem cells and genetic therapy targeted at our specific DNA. Okay? What that infusion will do, it will repair your insides, and it will bring your body clock back to where you are today. Think about that. 25 years from now, you can be just as young, just as healthy, just as beautiful as you are today. Who wants it? It won't be free. It will be really expensive. It will probably cost $250,000. Who will pay for that? Will your insurance pay for that? Will the government pay for that? If the rich people can get it, but the people in the favelas cannot, what does this mean for society? Okay? The science is going to happen. It is happening today. Actually, our scientists say they know all the science to do this already. It's 25 years of fine-tuning the procedure, getting the approvals. The issues, though, are not science. The issues are legal, they are moral, they are ethical. And you and we have to help figure them out. Robots are another cool area. Everybody reads about robots and they think about the little helper who will pick up your laundry and clean your house, right? We think robots are a lot different than that. Yes, there will be those kinds of robots. But we're more interested actually in the robots on the right of the screen. Because I don't know how active Amazon or Google are here in Brazil today. But within 5 to 10 years, they will be competing here the same way they are competing in the United States, trying to deliver goods and services to your home. And in the US, the battlefield is around same-day delivery, which means you get on the internet, you get on your smartphone, you order something, and within 6 hours, it's at your front door. How do you do that? Part of it may be things like the Google car, which drives up to your house and delivers them. There's also talk of drones, helicopters, coming through the sky to deliver empanadas to your front door. Okay? But we're also focused on where is the warehouse? Where is the storage for all those things that you will order? It cannot be in Sao Paulo if you want same-day delivery. It has to be somewhere here in Florianopolis. Maybe not on the island, but within an hour. Real estate is expensive. Space is limited. And so you will need robots to help sort and deliver all those goods. And so that's another area that we think will change. How many of you have seen Iron Man, the movie? Yes? How about Spider-Man? Okay. This is a soldier suit. It's a Superflex suit. We've built this for the US Army. Looks more like a Spider-Man suit than an Iron Man suit. No metal, very lightweight, fabric. When you put electric current to the fabric, it contracts. Okay? By placing the fabric in the right place and the sensors in the right place, we can let a soldier carry a 200-pound pack all day long. No problem. Okay? Now, we're trying to figure out, can you put this suit on somebody sitting in a wheelchair to help them stand up? Okay? These kinds of technologies are driving the next generation of innovations. And I could go on. If I had another 2 hours, I could tell you lots more stories. Okay? Unfortunately, I don't have that time. As those innovations are happening, one of the things you here in Santa Catarina need to be aware of is that it's happening faster. Faster and faster and faster all around the world. And that's not just true with things like this, okay? But it's true with clothing, it's true with automobiles, it's true with refrigerators, it's true with all kinds of goods and services. The life cycle is getting shorter. And that matters because you here in Florianopolis cannot assume the luxury of saying, I don't have competition. You do. It's worldwide and it's coming sooner than you expect. Companies all around the world, big companies. This is a survey that was done by BCG. I used to work there a few years ago. BCG surveys the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And last year, 75% of the CEOs of big companies said that innovation is one of their top 3 priorities. Because if they don't innovate, they will end up like Nokia, like Kodak. Dead, okay? And so innovation is critical to big companies, whether they're here in Brazil, Petrobras as an example, or other places, okay? So, one of the things we want to do with you this week, Peter and I and the SRI team, is focus on your definition of innovation, okay? Because if you're playing football, and Brazil has some very good football teams, If one person thinks the goal is here, and another person thinks the goal is there, and they're trying to pass the ball back and forth to score a goal, kind of hard, okay? If you all, Acate, your companies, the government, if you all don't share a common definition, a common goal of what you're trying to do, it's going to be really hard to achieve success. And so we want to encourage you to think about what is your definition of innovation and get a common agreement. SRI's definition, which may not be right for you, SRI's definition is around creating and delivering new customer value. Not new technology, new customer value in the marketplace with a sustainable business model. And by sustainable, I do not mean green. I mean money making, okay? We're trying to focus on finding and defining ways to create new value that people will pay for. That's what we think innovation is all about. You need to decide what innovation means for you. In the case of social innovation, there's a social innovation center here. Money may not make sense. You need to define what does innovation mean for you. So what will the politicians say? Don't mean to insult any politicians that are here. My apologies if there are any politicians in the audience. What will politicians say? Politicians will say, great, I'm going to fund more R&D at the universities. UFSC, I'm going to give you more money. You're going to go invent new things. You'll create more patents. We will license those. That will generate money, and that will fund more R&D, right? Wonderful vision. Healthy circle. Let me show you the numbers for the United States a few years ago. The US government funded $60 billion in R&D, created 20,000 new inventions. Cool. About 5,000 new products resulted. All right. $1.5 billion of revenue. $60 billion in, $1.5 billion out. That's not so good, okay? And this is not uncommon as we've looked at this in Sweden, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in China, in Japan. So how does Santa Catarina, UFSC, your economy, break this? How do you make your ecosystem work better than this? And a big part of that is around the universities, okay? We've worked with leading universities in the US, like Stanford, and around the world on what is their role with respect to innovation. 500 years ago, back in Europe, the universities, if you call them universities, they were monks sitting at a table copying by hand scrolls on parchment to preserve and save knowledge, to copy the Bible, to copy knowledge. The old role of the university 500 years ago was preserve knowledge. About 300 years ago, the printing press was invented. And all of a sudden, you had books, and you could share them. And then the universities bloomed, and they became the place to educate people, to share knowledge, to make it more widely understood. About 150 years ago, it shifted again, and the universities, driven by the Industrial Revolution, became places to do research, and that became the role of the university. Today, at Harvard, at Stanford, at MIT, at Princeton, at other leading universities around the world. The debate, and it is a debate, is around what is the university's role in driving economic change, in creating economic value. What's the role of the university in helping to invent things with commercial value? And I will tell you, there are an awful lot of professors who have tenure, who are very secure in their job, who don't want to do this. They like their safe, tenured, comfortable job. And then you have young professors who are trying to help invent the next Google or Facebook, who do want to encourage it. How do you, where are your universities? How do you change or evolve your universities to help them get involved in this discussion? This is another area where Peter and I hope to have a dialogue with you here in Santa Catarina this week. I mentioned SRI's numbers before. I also want to share with you Stanford's numbers, and this is public data. It's available on their website, about how many patent disclosures do they get, how many licenses do they sign, how much revenue do they generate. And the first message I want to give you is that in the red arrow up there, they've been at this for over 40 years. And it took Stanford 25 years to break even. The first 25 years, they lost money, okay? So I don't know if any of you work for the tech transfer office at UFSC, but if so, you can tell your boss, Stanford took 25 years. It's not fair to expect me to do it in 5, okay? That's part of the equation. The other part is, if you look at the green arrows and the odds of success, their odds of success are remarkably similar to SRI's, and it's only about 1 in 3 things, 1 in 5 things that they're successful at commercializing. So not everything that gets invented is going to be successful. So that's something else to think about. And in the grand scheme of things, there are really only 3 inventions at Stanford that have made a whole lot of money. One was with semiconductors, one was with recombinant DNA, and the third was Google. The rest of them, the vast majority, make less than $50,000. So all the professors who want to get rich, maybe you need to think about that a little bit. So one of the challenges, again, I want to understand better here in Santa Catarina, is that as a country, Brazil did not even make this chart in 2011. The amount that Brazil as a country spends on R&D as a percentage of its GDP is less than 1%. Okay? That's a problem. If I were a student protesting here, this would be one of the things I would be focused on, is we've got to spend more on R&D. Yes? Because you're competing with that bottom red country there, China. And they are now spending over 2.5% of their GDP on R&D. Within 5 years, China will spend more on R&D than any other country in the world. How do you compete with that? Okay? And one of the discussions we, again, Peter and I will have with all of you this week is, how do you focus your R&D? Do you take your R&D and spread it like butter on toast? Or do you focus it and go deep? Okay? We believe for you to be successful, for any place in the world to be successful, you need to have some focus. That's hard. That's a really difficult discussion politically, socially, about where are you going to focus your R&D investments and where are you not going to focus. And that's an unpopular, but we believe necessary discussion. Now, Brazil has been doing pretty well from some measures. You're growing right on par with all of Latin America. You represent the majority of it. And from a stage of development, this is World Economic Forum data, Brazil, again, outperforms your neighbors. Good stuff. The problem, this is data from The Economist last year, is that Brazilian productivity, the red line, pretty darn flat over the last 40 years. And you compare that to Chile, you compare that to South Korea, that's the challenge, okay? Innovation is, in our belief, the thing that's going to help you change that. And this is more recent from The Economist. The levers that the government has been using to try and support economic growth, issuing more debt, isn't sustainable. And so things, we believe, need to change. And what we've been told is that it's not going to happen at the national level. It has to happen at the state level. That the states, like Santa Catarina, really are going to be the engines of change in the Brazilian economy. So we think that what we're trying to do here is, as a world, the Industrial Revolution in the early 1900s changed the world. In the 1970s, Japan led the world. They built more high-quality products. Sony, Toyota, they were world leaders. Today, and for the future, we think innovators, countries that help and support and encourage innovation, are going to be the leaders in the world economy. And we think Brazil has an opportunity to do that as well or better than anyone else. So, a couple of lessons from Silicon Valley, if I can. First off, Silicon Valley is a bad name for it. If I were starting a new semiconductor company, I wouldn't do it in California right now. I might do it in Brazil, I might do it in China, but I wouldn't do it in Silicon Valley. So it changes. That's the first, again, thing. Change is constant. But what has fueled Silicon Valley's growth is invention. It's new ideas, it's creativity. This chart shows the number of patent filings in a couple of years. This was 97 to 2006 in different geographies. And the size of the bubble is the number of patents that were filed. The vertical axis is whether that filing pace is increasing or decreasing. And the horizontal axis is in how many different areas are those patents being filed. And what you see is Silicon Valley is filing more patents in more different areas at an increasing rate than anywhere else in the world. So invention matters, okay? Creativity matters. Spaces like this matter. And what that's meant is Silicon Valley, for the last 40 years, has consistently represented about 35% of all venture capital deals and all venture capital dollars that are invested in the United States. And I could spend another hour talking about all the reasons why. Unfortunately, I don't have that time this morning, but over the course of this week, Peter and I hope to have that dialogue with your innovation centers here. But I do want to call out a few things. And this is a survey that SRI did with the World Economic Forum and Stanford Business School about 18 months ago. We surveyed 1,400 entrepreneurs all around the world and said, what do you require to be successful? And the answers really were not very surprising. They said, we need accessible markets. Brazil's got a big accessible market. We need people. Brazil's got lots of people. We need funding and finance. My impression, I hope to learn more, is that the venture capital community here in Santa Catarina probably still needs some development. We need mentors, advisors, support systems, spaces like this. I think Santa Catarina's doing a pretty good job. Regulatory framework, it's got to be easy to set up a company. It's got to be easy to shut one down. Probably some room for work. Probably some room for improvement here. We need education and training. Again, this is a good start. We need the universities to be catalysts. UFSC, other universities, to help bring those ideas forward. And we need cultural support. We need to allow our young people to go off and try and start something, and if they're not successful, don't penalize them. Let them say, I learned something, let me try again, okay? Those are the issues that are required if you want a successful innovation ecosystem. And then we broke the data apart, looking at those 1,400 entrepreneurs from around the world, and we said, how does your geography rate against those criteria? And Silicon Valley, not surprisingly, did pretty well. Still a little bit too much government red tape, but pretty well. Latin America, not so good, okay? Santa Catarina is obviously different than Latin America as a whole, but one of the things we want to, Peter and I want to have a dialogue with you about this week, is how do we make the innovation ecosystem in Santa Catarina stronger, better, more supportive. And part of the culture of Silicon Valley is that everybody is involved. So, last time I did a startup, this was about 8 years ago, I could go to my lawyer and say, I need to incorporate and set up all the paperwork. Normally, that would cost, in Silicon Valley, about $20,000. Because I've worked with this lawyer before, he's part of the Silicon Valley ecosystem, the way it worked was, he said, Dennis, come in, give me your pitch. If I like it and I believe it, I will go to my partners and I will ask for permission. And they do this a lot. The permission is, they'll do all my legal paperwork, charge me nothing right now. And then, if I'm successful at raising funding, I will then pay them from that first round of financing, or they have the right to take stock in my company at that valuation. Okay? But it's not just the lawyer. It's my landlord when I need office space. He will say, I'll give you a lower rent if you give me some stock. It's my accountant who says, I'll give you cheaper accounting services, but give me some stock. Everybody in Silicon Valley is involved in the innovation ecosystem. And it goes down to the university. So my son, I mentioned before, graduated from Stanford 3 years ago. They surveyed his graduating class. So these are college seniors. And they asked these college seniors, what do you expect to be doing 5 years after graduation? Okay? Normal kind of question for a college graduate. About 7% of his class said, I'm going to medical school. I'm going to be a doctor. Good. Good for you. About 5% of his class said, I'm going to law school. We're going to be lawyers. I don't like lawyers very much, but they knew what they were going to do, okay? Over half, more than 50% of his graduating class said, we expect to be working for a startup in 5 years. Okay? Think about that. Graduates from UFSC, what do they expect to be doing? Do they expect to go to work for a startup? Or are they trying to go to work for Petrobras or the government or Telefonica or some big company, right? How do you encourage, how do you encourage your young people to think about innovation and entrepreneurship? Because universities tend to be full of inventors, brilliant people creating really cool things. They need to be married to entrepreneurs if you're going to do a successful startup. And the challenge in most university environments is finding those entrepreneurs and marrying them up with the ideas, with the inventors. You all know every single one of these companies, or I hope you do. And apart from the fact that they're all in IT, do you know what they all have in common? The thing they all have in common is they were started by students. Not professors, not graduates, students. Google, Stanford dropout. Dell, Texas dropout. Facebook, Harvard dropout. Okay? I don't want to encourage your students to drop out of school, but the reality is all of these companies were started by dropouts. More important, they were started by kids. 21, 22, 25 years old, they started these companies. Your students here in Florianopolis, in Santa Catarina, can do that too. You just need to help them, okay? And part of why we think this is important is students have a lower risk barrier. They don't have a mortgage, they don't have a car to pay, they don't have children to worry about. They have the freedom to take the risk of doing this, and if it doesn't work, no big deal. I'll try again. Okay? You need to encourage that. Now, this chart was done a few years ago by Duke and Berkeley, and they looked at every startup, every single startup that received funding in Silicon Valley in 1 year, 2007. And they asked the question, where did the founders come from? And in over half of the startups, one or more of the founders were not born in the United States. They were born in India, China, Japan, Taiwan, Germany, all over the world. Okay? These people had already taken a huge risk of moving to America. Compared to that risk, the risk of starting a company, very small. Okay? We showed this chart to the son of the president of Chile 6 years ago when he was at Stanford Business School. We started having a conversation. That then led to Startup Chile. How many of you have heard of Startup Chile? Okay. So Startup Chile, anyone, anywhere in the world can submit a business plan to the government of Chile. If they like it, they will send you 2 visas, say, come to Chile, start your company. When you arrive in Chile, they hand you $40,000 cash. Say, go, get started, okay? They don't take stock, they just give you the cash because they're trying to pull these entrepreneurs into the country. They recognize, and over the last 5 years, they have brought over 2,000 people into Chile from all around the world, from Brazil, from Argentina, from Ecuador, from Germany, from China, from Japan, all over the world. They recognize that in 80% of the cases, those startups will fail. They anticipate that. That's okay. Because once the entrepreneur gets to Chile, they discover it's a nice place to live, it's got some nice wine, there's some pretty girls. They stay, and they start another one, and another one, okay? What is Santa Catarina doing? Okay, how do you compete? How do you make sure your entrepreneurs with really good ideas don't move to Santiago? Something for us to talk about this week. And it's important to recognize that starting a company, doing entrepreneurship is not easy. I personally have done 7 startups, okay? One was a big success. We sold it to Cisco for $360 million. I was very happy. 2 are still in business. 4 are bankrupt. That's okay. I learned, personally, I learned more from the ones that failed than the one that was successful. I learned what not to do. How do you allow people to do that here in Santa Catarina? So, couple of quick thoughts, and then I'll take some questions here. So, the first thought from the financing world that I want you to be aware of is that the venture capitalists are not consistent. They, like many things, they tend to shift their focus over time. Last year, cloud computing, software, social networking, hot. Semiconductors, telecom, clean tech, cold. Okay? 5 years ago, clean tech was hot. 5 years from now, it will probably be hot again. For those of you that are potential entrepreneurs, you need to be aware of this. You need to be aware of what the investment community is interested in. And even more than the community as a whole, you need to know this for your geography. So this is the venture capital confidence level in biopharmaceuticals by geography, okay? If you were starting a biopharma company, Brazil, great. China, great. Germany, terrible, okay? So this ties back to the focus discussion of where are you going to focus your R&D at your universities? How is it going to link to your venture capitalists? You need to have an ecosystem where all those parts work together. And the other thing to be aware of is that the venture capital industry itself is not constant. This is a chart of the number of venture capital firms in the United States. That's that dark line on the top. And what you can see is that going into the year 2000, when everything was go, 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 there were a lot of venture capital firms formed. Then the bust happened. And the average venture capital firm raises a bunch of money and then invests it over 7 years. And at the end of the 7 years, they have to pay their investors back. So after the bust happened in 2000, no new firms were formed for 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, guess what? There were a whole lot of venture capital firms that lost money. They're going out of business. And so the number of venture capital firms worldwide is actually falling. Even though the interest in innovation and entrepreneurship is growing, the number of venture capitalists worldwide is shrinking. Don't know the statistics for Santa Catarina or for Brazil, need to find out. What has happened, though, is that people who did make money in the 2000s have become angel investors, people like me. So I'll go and I'll invest $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 in a startup if I believe in the founders and what they're trying to do. And there's some real money here. There's billions of dollars that have been invested this way. Crowdsourcing, crowdfunding is another variation of this. So something else we want you to think about if you are trying to do this here in Santa Catarina is what kind of innovation are you trying to encourage in a building like this one here? Are you trying to focus on innovation built on science, built on hard technology, something invented in a lab? That's what we do at SRI. It's what the professors at Stanford or UFSC might do. But I will tell you that the focus of Silicon Valley right now is in the middle. It's on iPhone apps. It's on Android apps. It's on innovation driven around consumer demand. Students are great at this. Computer science is great at this. But building an incubator for that is really different from building one where you need biology labs. And so you need to think about that. And then there's also innovation around business process, changing the way we buy and sell things, changing the way we make things. That's another kind of innovation, probably not driven so much by students, but potentially very, very important. And so one of the things Peter and I want to try and understand this week is as Santa Catarina builds out 11, 12, 13 innovation centers, what kind of innovation are you trying to encourage? Because the programs, the support you need will be different. And we also want to ask, are you trying to do breakthrough innovations or are you trying to do incremental innovation? Big companies tend to be really good at incremental innovation. Breakthrough innovation is harder, and big companies actually are not very good at it. The first iPhone was truly revolutionary. The iPhone 5C came in 3 colors. Big deal, right? I don't consider that innovation. What kind of innovation are you trying to encourage in a building like this one? I'll share with you some data from Sweden. I was invited 3 years ago by the Swedish government to be part of an international advisory board for their national incubator initiative. And the country of Sweden, about 10 million people, not that much bigger than Santa Catarina as a state, okay? Long, thin country. Across the country, they have 42 incubators, which they've been supporting for over 10 years now. Over those years, they've had 25,000 teams submit business plans to the incubators. They've accepted only 10%, 2,500, into the incubators. They stay in the incubator an average of 27 months, and 95% of them actually launch a business. That's cool. Today, after 10 years of history, there's still 1,000 companies in business. Awesome. 42% are still in business. That's neat. The problem, or the challenge, is that the average number of employees is 3. Average turnover, about $300,000 a year. They have successfully started a lot of small businesses. So the question is that what you're trying to do? Or are you trying to start the next Facebook or Yahoo? Depending on what you're trying to do, the programs you should put in place, the activities you should support are different, okay? They did this because they're trying to encourage job growth all across Sweden. And so they had 42 different incubators. As an option, we suggested you could go down to about 6. They didn't like that, okay? So this is part of the dialogue here in Santa Catarina, is what are you trying to do with your 13 incubators across the state? And as that happens, what I will observe in the United States is that the number of angels have basically replaced venture capitalists doing seed deals. I don't know that this is true here in Santa Catarina. I don't know that the family offices, the wealthy families, are yet supporting new startups to the extent necessary. We have one example here, but we need more. The challenge in the United States, in the US, is that what's happened over the last 10 years is the total number of angel deals that have been funded has grown dramatically, 90% over the last 10 years. The number of deals of venture capitalists are funding, reasonably flat. And so what's happening is we now have literally 100,000 startups that have received a small amount of money, $15, $20, or $500,000. They're not able to raise the $5 million they need to continue to grow, okay? And so Silicon Valley's ecosystem is trying to solve this. We're hoping, Peter and I are hoping, that we can get some more data around what's happening here in Santa Catarina to understand where are the potential bottlenecks in your financing ecosystem and how might you address some of those. As an example, we're working with the government of Chile to help them to design early stage venture capital funds to get at that angel funding portion of the equation. So, to wrap up, a few thoughts just on SRI, and I apologize for the commercial at the end. I'll try and keep this short. Our business, SRI's practice here, is that countries like Brazil, states like Santa Catarina, cities like Florianopolis, individual universities like UFSC, sometimes specific companies, for example, like Petrobras, have come to us and said, we need help managing the our innovation process. We don't think we're doing it very well. And again, what we believe innovation is all about is taking an idea and getting it to the marketplace and making it successful. So between Peter's team and my team, we have a whole series of programs that can help governments, universities, companies, and entrepreneurs with all different parts of the innovation life cycle, all the way around. We can do assessments to say, how are you doing relative to other parts of the world, other universities, other countries, other companies? We can help you develop innovation policies, write laws, create programs. We can give you tools, we can run programs for you. And what we want to understand this week in Santa Catarina is really how best might we be able to help you. This all starts with something that we call the 5 disciplines of innovation, which fundamentally start with the premise that if you're going to be innovating, if you're going to be bringing something to the market, you have to have a customer. And they have to have a problem they're willing to take their wallet out and give you money. So we try and make sure we understand what's that problem. And then we help create what we call a value proposition. And I'll give you the real short version of this today. How many of you have heard of an elevator pitch? Okay, so the concept behind an elevator pitch is you get in the elevator in downtown Florianopolis, one of the big hotels, the Minister of the Economy is next to you, and you get a minute to tell him about your idea and get him to invest with you, right? Probably not going to happen very often. But how many of you have ever tried to call somebody, or better yet, how many of you have ever received a phone call on your cell phone from somebody you don't know? There's a phone number, you don't recognize it. Yes? Everybody's received a call like that. How many of you answer those calls? Right? You don't answer them. So somebody leaves you a voicemail message. Hola, I need something. How much of that message do you listen to before you delete it? 10 seconds? 15 seconds? Maybe, if you're being generous. Alternatively, okay, voicemail doesn't work. I can't reach them that way, so I'll send them an email. How many of you get email from people you don't know? Everybody, right? How much of those emails do you read before you delete them? Do you even open them? I just read the title. If the title's no good, maybe the first paragraph. Then I delete it. Okay? Or you tweet somebody, you SMS them, WhatsApp them. How long can that message be? The point of our second discipline is if you know who your customer is and what problem you're solving for them, you need to be able to communicate quickly, what's your story? What's your value proposition? And in our workshop, we give you a framework and a set of tools to be able to create that message. Whether it's email, voicemail, live, you need to be able to do it quickly, okay? That's what Discipline 2 is all about. And we believe that innovations don't happen without champions, so we talk about that. Champions still need teams, we talk about that, and they need the support of an organization, whether that's an incubator like this or the university, and we talk about that. Our whole goal with all of this, our whole purpose in being here this week, is to try and help Santa Catarina develop a faster, more predictable process for managing innovation. We want to help you understand and build out your innovation ecosystem. And then finally, if you will work with us and allow us to do this, we'd like to connect you to SRI and our network of other innovators around the world. The team, Peter and I, are both experienced entrepreneurs. We've worked in industry as well as on the consulting and research side of this equation. We have a team of people that have done this before, that have started companies, raised venture capital, made them successful, and we'd like to share those lessons with you. We do this all around the world. We're delighted to be here in Santa Catarina today. I was in Santiago, Chile last week. I will be in Tokyo, Japan in another month. So we do this all around the world. And importantly, again, I want to emphasize, you are competing with people from all over the world as they do that. And I'll close with just a thought here. This was, I was in Norway about 1.5 years ago in a little city called Raufoss in Norway, middle of no place. The Norwegian government has funded a center of excellence there on manufacturing. And I was talking with Sverre Narvesen, who's the president of that center of excellence. And he said, Dennis, the challenge for us here in Norway is we have, our standard of living is 67% higher than the rest of the world on average. We want to keep it that way. We like living well. How do we do that? If we're going to guarantee that for the next 2 generations, the only way we can do that is by being at least 67, if not 75% better at the process of managing innovation. Not at any given innovation, not at any given invention, but he said for us to do this as an economy, as a region of Norway for 1 or 2 generations, we have to be better at the process of managing innovation than the rest of the world, okay? That's the challenge I believe Florianopolis, Santa Catarina has in just the same way. You want to raise your standard of living compared to the rest of the world. That means you need to be better than the rest of the world at managing innovation, because that's what it's going to take, okay? And Peter and I want to have the dialogue with you this week about how do you do that, because we think the way you work, the processes you use, the disciplines you put in place are what's going to drive that innovation. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. Obrigado. I hope this was helpful. And